Hello and welcome to Meet Your Inspiration podcast with Meri and Rich. Here we're talking about inspiration, motivation, and empowerment. Our guests are ordinary people who became extraordinary, and sharing their stories, we want to empower you to become the person you want to be and to go beyond your dreams.
We'd like to welcome you this morning, and we'd just like to say thank you to our sponsor, What's On in Kent. And today we have our very special guest, Jeni. Jeni runs a small tutoring business down here in Kent, just in Faversham, called Sunnydene Tutoring.
Hi there.
Welcome, Jeni.
Thank you.
So one of the important things these days in education is sometimes children need a little bit of extra help and support. And in Kent, there is an 11 plus Kent test, which is something that seems to happen down this part of the world. And it's not everywhere across the whole of the country, but different parts of the country sometimes have additional tests and to help children. So Jeni, would you like just to give us a little bit of background about, first of all, yourself and how you started?
Okay. So I started as a teacher. I was a class teacher up until the time my daughter came along. And then I wanted to focus on being a mum, so took a step down from my full-time teaching job and did some supply. My full-time job in class had been with reception children, which was fabulous. I loved it at the time. But then in my period of time doing supply teaching, I started working with slightly older children, year 5 and 6 I particularly liked. And I then took a pause from teaching when my son was born, and was a mum at home for quite a number of years. Time went on and it was time for me to go back to work, but my confidence had been really knocked quite badly from not being in the working world for quite a long time. And even though I felt the time was right to go back to work, I couldn't bring myself to go for an interview. I didn't feel that I could go back to the classroom, and I definitely didn't feel that I could face an interview. What I really wanted to do was buy my husband a Christmas present without putting it on the credit card for him to pay off in January. So I decided that sort of a nice step would be for me to do a little bit of tutoring, so I could use my teaching skills, but in a very low-key way without the need for that scary interview.
When you start this and you had this idea, did already the tutoring becoming a big thing, or it wasn't that much?
Nowhere near as much as now.
Okay.
There were tutors around, and I knew of a few tutors locally, a few teachers who had turned their hand to some tutoring, but it's exploded massively in recent years.
What age group were you looking to do it at that point? Because you have to choose an age group and a band, and obviously, sort of depends on what your experience is, I guess.
So I suppose there are two answers, I think, to that question. The first is really, my feeling was when I was setting up a business, I didn't want to say no to anybody. So in the early days, I sort of turned my hand to lots of different things that weren't always exactly what I would have chosen, but all of which were comfortably within my skill set. So that's sort of the first answer from a business point of view. From a personal point of view, I felt really strongly that I wanted to support children and their families who were preparing for the Kent test, because for some people, there's a huge amount of pressure. There's a really widespread belief that grammar schools are best, and it's my firm belief that they're great for some children, but they're really not great for other children. And so I held back from Kent test tutoring to begin with, because I didn't want to be part of a system which was artificially boosting children to get the grades they needed, to the points they needed in a test, to go to a grammar school where then potentially they would struggle for their secondary education. That wasn't something that I wanted to be engaged in. But then I had lots of inquiries for Kent test tutoring, and I decided that maybe in some small way I could help the children who I was potentially going to be working with to feel more confident, to be more familiar with the content of the test, but more importantly, maybe if I was meeting with children where I didn't feel they were going to thrive in a grammar school, perhaps I could take a deep breath and say to those parents that I really didn't think their child was going to have their best experiences for secondary education in a grammar school. Those conversations become much easier with time, and I don't blink now when I have to have them, although I'm always very mindful it's not easy for a parent to hear. But I decided that actually maybe if that was something that parents wanted, I would prepare children for the Kent test, but I would do it in my own way. So I started, even in the early days, I started to develop what has now become my Kent test programme of study, which is a set of activities that the children work through for the 30, however many weeks of the school term. My dates allow me to work with the children, and that supports the children to become more confident because I familiarise them with the content of the test. We look at how they can use their existing skills to answer the Kent test questions. What I don't do is artificially boost children who aren't going to thrive. And to start with, I was working with individuals. I now work with groups, largely because that lends itself really nicely to my ethos of preparing and familiarising.
Because it must, I guess, if you do on an individual base, you can really push an individual much further advance. Yeah. Whereas if you're doing it with a group, it's easier to sort of get that balance right between the individual children.
Absolutely. Whenever you're working with an individual child, you're looking at where their gaps in knowledge are, and you're working to fill them.
Yes.
When you're working with a group of children, you adapt the session and you talk to each child individually within the group, and you're aware of which children are doing brilliantly and which children need a bit more support. But you can't adapt the session content on the fly as you can with an individual session. So with an individual session, you end up adapting a lot more. And if a child, for example, was struggling with maths and it was an individual pupil, then automatically you would spend a huge amount of your time with them working on the maths. And then perhaps they would take their test at the beginning of year 6, they would be offered a grammar school place. Invariably, parents then stop the tuition because their target was the 11 plus. We've been there, done that. The child then sort of reverts to their more natural level of work, their more natural pace of work, and then they start grammar school in year 7, and it's maybe a bit of a struggle. So the group sessions work really well as a way of sort of balancing
the children
that.
as well adapt each other and help each other when they are in the groups? Because yes, someone might be good on one thing, the other one on another, but probably they learn from each other as well.
Definitely, and that's one of the things I love about the group scenario. It's much more relaxed. Exactly as you say, the children learn from each other. It makes the groups more varied because it's not just me doing the teaching. A child will have an answer to a question that will spark another child's thinking. They'll then say what their views are, and then the conversation sort of develops. Children work in pairs during my group sessions as well, which is a really nice way for them to share ideas and to build on the strengths they've got and sort of consolidate their learning if they're explaining something to someone they're working with. And there's a really strong problem-solving aspect in the Kent test. One of the things that I think lots of parents don't realise is that every year in the Kent test we see new kinds of questions. So there are lots of example questions in practice books you can buy, but increasingly we're seeing new kinds of questions developed specifically for the test. And for that reason, when I'm working with my pupils to look at some example questions, I don't ever just share with them, this is what you do when you see this kind of question. You do this first, now this, now this. We look at the question and chat about ideas. The children in the group can sort of throw ideas around as to what they might do to tackle that if they were seeing it for the first time. And that's a really nice approach because, of course, we all think differently, our brains work differently. And so by sharing all of those ideas, we, exactly as you're saying with sort of real life grown-up work scenario, you've sort of got a lot of different approaches going on and being discussed, which is fabulous.
You as a tutor, do you usually know what is coming and what could be on the Kent test? And you can, not of course exactly the questions, but what type or what is the new thing that it's going to be on the Kent test?
I will have a really good idea of the format of the Kent test, and the questions are broadly similar in as much as there are things about the maths paper, the English paper, which are replicated year on year. The questions are very different, but there are certain elements which we see. I don't actually see the papers. All of my knowledge is based on my own teaching experience, if we think back to when I was teaching. And then my own 2 children went through the Kent test, so they gave me a lot of feedback afterwards. And then I now work with large numbers of children every year, and lots of those children give me feedback afterwards. So I'm really fortunate in that I'm able to piece together what's happened in the test, but that only comes afterwards. And I think that's actually really important, because what we are wanting is for the Kent test to be identifying the children who are genuinely going to thrive in a grammar school. And actually, the more people know in advance about what's coming, the more coachable it is. And that's not what we want. We want the test to be identifying the children who are going to manage well in a grammar school. And actually, the fact that there will be questions that nobody knows about before they appear in the test is really important, because then what we're doing, if we take the example of a verbal reasoning question, for example, which the test creators have come up with, and no one's ever seen it before, but it's been devised to assess verbal reasoning skill, then if the children are seeing it for the first time, we're actually assessing their ability to use their verbal reasoning skills, rather than their ability to remember what someone's told them to do when they see that kind of question. So it really does serve in some way to level the playing field by having a test that isn't known about beforehand. But the format is the same. So I know the pace the children need to be working at for their maths, for example. So that's something that I work on a lot. The format of the English paper is the same year on year, although there are different types of questions. I know what I need to be preparing my children for. And then the smaller sections of the reasoning paper are different kinds of questions every year, but they're always small chunks of questions which are similar type. So by preparing the children by looking at as many different kinds of questions as possible, then they're developing that problem solving thinking. That
and there are only 3 different types of paper. So, I mean, I've never done an 11 plus, so I've never sort of experienced the structure. So anyone who hasn't sort of come across the structure, what is the main structure for the test in terms of, like, obviously you mentioned maths and you mentioned English. Yeah. So, and obviously you mentioned about reasoning. So, like, obviously I think about all the different subjects you might do at school, but, like, how do they cover all those in the test?
Children are often disappointed there's not music and art when I chat to them about what's in the Kent test. So there are 2 papers. The first paper is maths and English. Okay. The second paper is reasoning, and that's verbal reasoning, non-verbal reasoning, and spatial reasoning.
Okay.
And then there's an assessed writing task. But the assessed writing task is only looked at in cases of head teacher appeal. So quite sadly, all those fabulous bits of writing often aren't seen.
So the creativity side of it is not really assessed properly?
Really? Only in the writing, in the assessed writing portion, yeah.
So it's very much... So, I mean, if a child is very practical and very good with their hands, the test really doesn't sort of help them at all. It's purely academic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And was that all the time? Here in Kent, they had this.
Yes, I took an 11 plus test lots and lots of years ago. It was very different then. I didn't know I was taking it. I went to school and was aware that something quite strange was happening, and went home and said to my mum and dad that it was all a bit odd today. We had playtime at a different time from the others, and we weren't allowed into the classroom until the teacher said we could go in, and then we weren't allowed to talk. And my parents said, well, that was your 11 plus. And there was no preparation. I didn't know anything about it beforehand.
Obviously, for me, the Kent test was something new. And for me, coming from another country, I wasn't too much aware about the educational system. But something that I was very surprised is that not every part of the Kent test is covered from schools. So turned out that most probably the kids need a bit of help because they won't be aware of certain part of the test. Was that this case all the time? Did they ever teach them some for all the parts?
Yeah. So for a while there were lunchtime clubs, after school clubs, which were called various things, not generally Kent Test Club, but Code Breaking Club or Problem Solving Club. And really the idea of those clubs was to support the children who are going to be taking the Kent test with these kinds of questions that they haven't seen before. These days, schools are actively discouraged from preparing the children in any way. And my understanding of that is that the reasoning part of the test is designed really to be an IQ test. So with that part of the test, what we're doing is assessing a child's ability to learn. So not only do we want them to be working at a really super standard in their English and their maths, we also want them to be showing us through the test that they've got the ability to learn going forwards. So that's why it needs to be a balance of the three different areas, the maths, the English and the reasoning. And as with IQ tests as adults, if we were to practice, we would get better and better and better. So there is an element of being able to improve, but there would be a limit to what practice could do to improve your ability if you weren't naturally going to be working at that sort of level.
Are you aware in the other parts of UK, do they've got something similar? Because are other kids going through kind of the same challenges? Or
in some places. So there are some counties where there's still an 11 plus, but they're fairly few and far between. 11 plus tests are used quite widely in London, I understand, for entrance to independent schools. But the format of the test that we have in Kent is unique.
And do you think it's the hardest one?
I don't have very much knowledge of many tests in other areas. I do know that the way that secondary schools enrol their pupils in Kent might differ from, even in our part of Kent, might differ from other parts of Kent, because that we have selective schools. So where we are here in Faversham, most of our schools for grammar are selective, but we also have super selective schools, which is where children who have scores that are above and beyond the threshold for being offered a grammar school place, then the children would potentially have the option of going to what is called a super selective school. And I know in other parts of Kent there are a lot more super selective schools which parents are seeking their children to go to.
And are they at a special level, specialising in a particular subjects where they can sort of advance? Sort of, I don't know. I mean, I suppose if a parent wants their children to be a lawyer or something like that, you go to this particular school, then they've got that ability because maybe they're really good on English or communication skills.
I certainly in some parts of Kent there are schools that have different specialisms. I don't think we have that particularly here in this part of Kent.
What questions parents bring to you? Because I'm talking from my point of view, when I had the pleasure to meet you 2 years ago, or 3 probably, all I heard around me was the child need to go in grammar school. This is important. And coming from a country where usually as well, I think we've got something similar, but they're called with different names. Some are probably a bit more grammar school, and the other ones are more technical, or you choose what profession you're gonna do for life. And I was thinking, but if it's not good, what about if it end up in the other school? But everything in my head was like, if it's another school, not grammar, it's not good at all. Then was the meeting with you, with parents, and you made it clear and you bring really nice points and you explain to everybody that actually, if a child is not a good fit naturally for a grammar school and it's not far too academic, actually pushing and going to grammar school might impact to the learning for the next 5 years. Can we just have a little light about that and just share? Because I'm pretty sure there are lots of parents who are going through the same. Probably they don't ask the question, or they're a bit worried how the others will look at them. So
I feel really strongly about this. So my position is that the Kent test isn't a test to pass or fail. It's a test to find out which kind of secondary school might be best for you. And those are the words that I use a lot with my pupils. It's very wordy. It's very difficult to say all that instead of saying pass or fail. But I feel sufficiently strongly about it to make the effort to use a whole string of words rather than just one or two. Grammar schools are great for some children, but not every child is going to thrive in a grammar school. If they don't have a naturally quick pace of working, then they're going to be more comfortable in a high school. If they're fabulous at maths but need a little bit more support with their English, or vice versa, then they're going to be far more comfortable working in a high school where potentially they could be in the grammar stream for the subject they're fabulous at and get that little bit more help, or even just work at a slightly more comfortable pace in the subject where they aren't as naturally brilliant. And really, the best thing about being offered a grammar school place, from my perspective, is that gives the family all of the choices. So every year I work with lots of children who are offered grammar school places, and almost all of them do end up choosing a grammar school for their child. But there will always be children and their parents who go and look at all of the schools we've got locally. And even though they've got the option of a grammar school, they decide that actually they're going to be more comfortable in a high school. Maybe the facilities, the sports facilities or the dance facilities, or maybe just the travel arrangements of a high school make it more appealing as an option. But if you don't take the test, then you don't ever know whether you've got that option or not.
This is actually my other question, because a few years ago, before my son became to the time for Ken test, I was on a table where there was a conversation where a parent said, "Oh no, I'm not sending it to the Ken test because he or she, I don't remember, can't make it. And what's the point? Can go whichever school choose." And then, obviously, me don't know much back then about the Ken test. My only thought and reaction was like, but this is opportunity. And it's something that I believe the kids need to go. And as you said, doesn't matter you pass or fail, you need to give them the chance to go, and you can't take the decision on your own as a parent. What do you think about that? Is it, or it's too much stress, that sometimes there is too much pressure to the children? So is it possible that if a child is not feeling comfortable at all about that, you can't really push it and you better leave it?
What I actually want to say is send them to me, because I work really hard to make the Kent test process as stress-free for the children and their families as I possibly have the power to do.
That you do.
Thank you. And I think it can be a very pressured situation for some children. But largely the children are putting that pressure on themselves because of what they're hearing from their peers on the playground. Sometimes, really sadly, parents are putting pressure on children because they are thinking that a grammar school is best and that's what they want at all costs. One of the things that I often say to parents is, regardless of how confident you are that your child is working at a level that means pursuing a grammar school place is a great idea, we can't ever be certain. But if you're as certain as you possibly can be that your child is working at the level to be offered a grammar school place, actually one of the best things you can do to help them achieve that grammar school place is to talk to them about the relative merits of the high schools we've got locally as well. Because by removing that pressure from them, you're actually helping them feel much calmer on the day, and you can't perform your best if you're worried. So actually what we need to be doing is helping the children feel confident, helping them feel calm about taking the test, because then they're going to show us what they're really capable of. So by removing all of that pressure, we can actually be supporting the children to show their true potential in the test.
How long do you think need to do the preparation? Is it a year? Usually it's year 5, isn't it? When they start, this is when it starts the program.
Historically, I have started my Kent test sessions at the beginning of a child's year 5. That is plenty long enough for me to be able to prepare a child with all of the relevant test strategy information, to help them understand all of the different question types and the format and the pace they need to work out, and for me to make sure that they are familiar with some of the more challenging question types that we could sensibly expect might arise. The Kent test content is only assessing the curriculum up to the point in time where children are. So it's not necessary to sort of boost them beyond the skill set of their year group at school, but sometimes they need to be using things that they've learnt in school in new ways, or maybe combining learning from 2 different areas of maths to tackle a question that they haven't seen before. So we need to be making sure they're familiar with all of those sorts of skills as well. Because my approach is very much that I want to be relaxed. I want the children to come and enjoy their learning. I want them to be engaged in what we're doing, and I want to have plenty of time to consolidate and revise and have time to enable the children to learn from each other, as we were saying, to incorporate games, to make it fun and engaging as well as valuable learning. So a year gives me plenty of time. Children often start through the year, and I'm really happy with that. As long as I've still got spaces in my groups, children can join in. I do often have parents wanting sessions from year 4. So for this year, I have started offering group sessions for year 4 children as well, but they're not a formal introduction to the Kent test. They are very much about developing sort of what I would call the foundation skills. So mental arithmetic, accuracy and pace, vocabulary, and problem solving, resilience, and not panicking when you're being timed. And we do that by playing games with timers. I might set them 2-minute challenges just so they get used to working more quickly. So that's sort of the focus of my year 4 groups.
And I guess the children at that point, they're not really conscious of they're preparing for a test.
Right.
I think probably all children would benefit from having this additional help, because the school teacher is limited in terms of their class sizes, because their class sizes is much larger. So they're in a situation where they can't focus on necessarily as well on individual children, whereas you've got the ability to focus on very small groups. And that obviously helps their learning. And I'd imagine it would be a really big benefit to many children to have that ability to come into these like tutoring sessions, because it really builds their confidence. It gives them a strength, like you said, and being able to evaluate and to build, confidence in a child is one of the most important things ever.
For sure. And my year 5 groups are obviously quite fun and valuable in sort of some of the ways that you're mentioning there, because almost every year I have children where I have to have a conversation. I feel I have to have a conversation with parents where I let them know that really I don't have a crystal ball, but my experience is telling me that it's really unlikely their child is going to be offered a grammar school place as a result of the Kent test. And almost always those children carry on coming to the sessions because they enjoy coming and because the parents can see the value, even though the child won't actually be taking the test, or they might be taking the test but not with any expectation of the outcome being a grammar school assessment. So I think you're absolutely right. There's lots of value in
but you mentioned a few
on.
things, obviously problem solving, resilience, working in teams, all these little things which help you on your future development.
Definitely.
And I'm pretty sure that all of them, whoever knows, lots of people know you in Faversham, because this is how I found you. People talking and sharing information about you, but I really love the way how you done your program and all these games. And this is the tutoring book, isn't it?
So this,
It's absolutely amazing how, because we as a family, we were just playing the games because they're very much close to the board games and all these games that can help in general have fun and develop skills and help everybody. But how you end up coming up with these ideas, or where your inspiration come to create this kind of fun and educational
so
together?
my first class teaching job was with reception, and I firmly believe in the value of play. And I think it's really, really important that children learn in all sorts of different ways, with games being one of them. I'm acutely aware that the children have been at school all day by the time they come here. And so what I really have always been striving to do is make the learning opportunities that I present enjoyable, so the children want to come, because really if a child wants to learn, you're a good chunk of the way there. So I have always suggested fun and relaxed and sort of enjoyable activities for the parents of my pupils to be working on at home with them, to develop the skills that they need. And as my husband will tell you, I'm always thinking about the next thing. I'm never satisfied with where I am right now. I'm always thinking, what am I doing next? And so I decided that I wanted to compile lots of the ideas of the games that I'd been casually suggesting to parents, or sending in an email after a session. Wanted to combine all of those and create a booklet, which is what you see there. So that's a booklet which all of my children will be given it's been available for parents to buy. But I really firmly believe that the children need the foundation that I was mentioning, with the vocabulary and the arithmetic and the problem solving. So starting from next September, as children start to register for their Kent test sessions with me, they're going to get this booklet, with the hope that the parents will be working through the games and the activities with the children. So they've got those foundation skills when they start. But through the year as well, as we progress through the year, we start working on more formal activities. The homework becomes more along the lines of sets of questions. Through necessity, we're preparing the children for a test, so it can't all be fun and games. Although that can be an important element of it. The children do need to be working through timed tasks as well, of course. So playing a game alongside other homework, which is much more formal, can still sort of maybe balance the odds in favour of it being enjoyable.
Every word games or number games, and but there are so many varieties. How did you come up with all these ideas? It's just use your experience, obviously, and different
things that I played with my own children when they were little. Some of which were games which I'd played with my mum and dad when I was little. We used to go on long car journeys for caravanning holidays in France. So we play word games, number games with the car number plates.
Exactly. This was absolutely amazing, because literally, you were on the drive, you go somewhere and you start this, and it was absolutely great fun. But in the meantime, it's not like obviously you're learning or you're teaching too much something, but it's your brain is thinking, and it was just really nice.
Can I ask you, while we're talking about this amazing book, so you have a shop here.
Yes.
So obviously people who are local can come in here and buy the shop. Is it possible to buy it online? Can people buy the book online? Do you have an online shop?
I used to have an online shop. So Sunnydene Tutoring was my only business up until this September. And on my website, I also had a shop where parents from further afield could buy a digital copy and download the booklet. I've now separated my businesses. So Sunnydene Tutoring is focused just on delivering tuition sessions, and the shop is a separate entity. So at the moment, the shop doesn't have a website or any ability to sell more widely than just here in Faversham, but that's something that's coming.
Because obviously, since last September, you moved to a new place. You've got all the tutors that you're working with. Tell us I assume this is a very clear point, that children need tutoring. And the need, I assume when you start was one way, and during the years develop. How many years you've got Sunnydene Tutoring?
This is my 8th year of tutoring. So I started with 2 pupils a week at my dining room table, and word spread. Parents obviously liked what I did. And by the end of the first year, I considered myself to be fully booked, although I didn't have anywhere near as many sessions available as I have now, but I had more than I had imagined would be possible at the start. And then word continued to spread. I developed the idea of my group sessions for the Kent test, so that enabled me to work with more pupils. But by the end of the second year, I had added more sessions to my own teaching schedule, and I was turning parents away. So from really quite early on, I had the vague idea that maybe I could work with other tutors, but I was a little bit hesitant because Sunnydene Tutoring was my baby, and I was quite protective. And so I didn't pursue that for a while. And then it got to a point where really I felt as though I was letting parents down, because the more group sessions I had, the more happy parents there were. And therefore there were more parents recommending me to their friends and other parents on the playground and their next door neighbours. And I was saying no a lot, and it was getting to the point where I was thinking this actually is probably going to get to a point where it's detrimental to my business, because potentially parents are going to stop asking me for sessions because word is going to spread that I'm always full, and so there's no point.
Which is a great shame, particularly when you're giving such an amazing service and everyone goes, oh, I want to be on it.
Yeah, but look, this is the point where you have to realise and decide for yourself.
So at this point I thought, okay, let's if I pick really, really fabulous people to work with me, then this is maybe worth pursuing. So I popped an advert on Facebook, not really knowing what the interest would be, if any. And initially I didn't have interest from anybody who really met the criteria I was looking for. And then just out of the blue one day, I had an email from a very lovely lady who is still on my team. And she said, I've just seen your advert. It's a while ago now. I don't know whether you're still looking, but actually I'd really like to have a chat about what you do. And so she came and we had a cup of coffee and we chatted and left being feeling like we were great friends already. Our ethos was clearly aligned.
Yeah.
We both had very similar views on how children learn best and how we wanted tuition to work. And I thought this actually could be a really good partnership. So she started working for me, and then gradually more and more tutors came on board. Word sort of spread. I periodically put adverts out, but mostly the tutors who approach me hear about me because their colleagues or their friends know of me, and then they approach me just sort of on the off chance that I might be recruiting. So gradually my team grew. And initially at that point, the tutors on my team were going to their pupils' homes. So I was teaching at home. By this stage, I'd moved from the dining room table. I'd persuaded my husband that he wanted to move his study upstairs and I could have his study, which was in the front of the house. So I moved into what had been his study, and that was my teaching room, which was great. And the tutors on my team were going to their pupils' homes, which worked. Some houses are set up in a way that makes tuition absolutely viable, no problem at all. Households are busy places, particularly if you've got more than one child.
Of course, different ages and different activities and backgrounds.
Absolutely.
After school, after work.
Yeah, so, lots going on. And sometimes I was thinking that maybe some children weren't getting the best experience because there were distractions from other siblings wanting to be involved, or the drawer of something up in their bedroom they wanted to go and grab and show the tutor, all of which is lovely and really representative of the great relationship that the tutor and the child has, but not really conducive to actually the learning that was immediately the tutor's focus. So I also felt a little bit removed. I wanted it very much to be us working as a team. So the tutor working with the child, the parent and the tutor being able to chat after each session about how the session had gone. But I didn't want the tutors to be feeling that they had to do lots of additional admin. So I wanted to place myself between, it's not quite the right word because not as an abstraction, but as a facilitator for conversation between the parent and the tutor. So I would always be dealing with the admin side of things, and I always wanted, and still do want, my tutors to be able to focus entirely on the fabulous sessions that they're delivering to the pupils. It felt a little bit more difficult to have that relationship with parents when I wasn't actually seeing them above and beyond the initial session I'd have where I'd go with the tutor to the child's home. So I started to think, actually, do you know what, if we were all in one space together, this would be much more the way I envisaged it working, where it's much more a team effort and we're all working together for the best interests of the child. So I started looking for spaces that would be potentially fabulous tuition centres. Went through various disappointments of spaces that I thought would be perfect and didn't work out for one reason or another. And in hindsight, I'm very pleased they didn't, because I'm now here and it's working brilliantly.
And this is a most amazing
really nice
facility. It's
Thank you.
incredible. When you walk in, obviously there's the shop in the front.
Yeah.
And then you've got the little library on the one side with a little sofa and all the books laid out, which looks absolutely amazing. And then you come into this amazing room, like for the children to sit around. And then there's around the back, there's all the extra facilities as well. I mean, it's just a phenomenal space, isn't it? And it feels like just so homely as well. When you walk in, it just feels homely, which is lovely. It's comfortable. The seats are comfortable. There's nice carpet. It doesn't feel like running around in a little junior school. It feels like something really special.
Yeah. And I've been really fortunate in that a lady who I have been trying to persuade to work for me for quite a long time has started working for me this week. And she did her first sessions on Thursday, and she sent me an email afterwards saying there was a really lovely busy buzz in the main tuition space when she was teaching. So that's really lovely. That's what I wanted to develop. Yeah.
There is one really cool thing that do you want to share? The 3 young girls Because for me it was very sweet. I have the pleasure to know two of them. But when I've seen on your Facebook page that they start obviously to help with little things here, just please share with people because they don't know, but they've been...
So I have a fabulous Amy in my life. She does huge amounts of admin. I was going to say admin assistant. That doesn't do her justice by any stretch. She does lots and lots, all sorts of useful things behind the scenes and in the shop as well, talking to parents and organising sessions and all sorts for me. But I wanted somebody who could be more of a sort of teaching assistant in my sessions sometimes. And I also wanted somebody who could answer the door if a pupil arrived to a group session late. And so I advertised for, I call them my after school support crew. And I had quite a few applicants. I didn't realise it would be such a popular position, and shortlisted and have employed 3 sixth formers who between them work after school Monday to Friday to support me. 2 of the 3 were my pupils many years ago.
Oh, wow.
How amazing is
that's
this?
really lovely.
I think it's incredible. And if you look back, you wouldn't even think like, wow, how the time goes.
No, it's
and
crazy,
they were
isn't it?
coming here for this session.
Yeah.
For me, it was like, wow, look at these names, what they're doing. But it's great because as well, they can carry on learning from you and your experiences and you as a person as well, and how much you achieve. Because I would say this is a really big achievement, and I'm sure you will grow because people need this. And the kids, you can see, I haven't seen a child coming here like, oh, I need to go for my tutoring. All of them are coming with such a big smiles, and doesn't matter it's 7:00 in the evening, some of them leave. They leave like that. And this is what you want. Doesn't matter it's Thursday or Friday, end of the week, 7:00. They're still happy, which makes them, and I'm sure with or without the CAN test or other kind of tutoring you're doing, they all learning and they're getting the value which will help them for the future, for their future, which is...
So with the children, one of the things I was thinking about, obviously the children, obviously most of them are coming after school.
Yes.
But are there any instances where you actually look after children who maybe sort of struggle and can't really go to school, and then they need almost like one-to-one tutoring or tutoring in very small groups? Because obviously, I mean, there are sometimes disruptive children, or there's children with ADHD, or maybe even other more complex matters which mean that they don't integrate into school. Can they come to you in the daytime?
Yeah,
other opportunities?
Yeah. So because my own teaching is focused on Kent test preparation, there's not a need for what I'm currently offering myself during school hours, but I have tutors on my team who are available during the school day, and a space which is also available during the school day. So absolutely, we do have a growing number of home educated children who come for sessions during what would ordinarily be school hours.
This is something I would like to ask you about that, because I heard, and I'm hearing more and more about, for the last few months, I heard about at least 5 children, secondary school, or different level, they become homeschooling. Is that happening with primary schools?
Yes,
as well?
definitely. Yeah, there's a large and growing home educating community in Faversham. I think there are two groups, broadly speaking. I believe. One set of parents genuinely want to home educate. They feel that's the best experience for their child, and there are lots of opportunities for those children to be educated by their parents at home, obviously, but also with lots of an increasing number of tutors available during school hours, because lots and lots of teachers are leaving the classroom and setting up as tutors. So lots of home educated children go to tutors during school hours, and there are lots of clubs and activities for them which are really enriching. So there's a lot going on during the school day.
So homeschooling then doesn't mean that you just stay at home
No,
and you do something. You
definitely
still got access if you want.
Yes, there are lots and lots of
groups.
Lots and lots of opportunities for home educating parents to enrol their children in all sorts of enriching fabulous experiences. My own focus now is on the Kent test. I used to offer maths and English support as well, but really decided that what I wanted to be doing was the Kent test group sessions for a larger proportion of my week. So the tutors on my team offer maths and English support for primary and secondary pupils. And I also now have a secondary science tutor on my team as well.
Okay, wow.
So I am able to offer support from, well, theoretically from reception right up to GCSE, and then for A-level science as well.
So with sciences today, are they still, I mean, in my day it was physics, biology, chemistry. Are they still the same 3 subjects, or are there combined sciences as well?
So there is a both, really. Okay. In the earlier years at our local grammar school, the children do learn the 3 sciences separately, but they do it on a circuit. So they have science lessons, and then for part of the year they're learning each of those sciences. And then once they get to their GCSE courses, they're learning physics, chemistry and biology separately. At other schools, they are taught combined science. Okay. So there are different curricula for different schools.
And if you have all this, obviously, when you start to have for secondary school, does it mean that you had the calls for that? Questions people were asking? Did that bring you to, or you just decide to?
I was frequently asked. So either parents would approach me saying, do you offer or do GCSE maths and English, or can you recommend someone? Which I can. Yeah. When my sessions are full, one of the things that I'm really happy to do is recommend other local tutors. Yeah. But also where I had children in year 5 for Kent test work, maybe their parents would then want them to carry on through for year 6, and then they didn't want to stop at the end of year 6. So could I carry on into year 7? And so there was a demand for secondary tuition as well. It's not ever been something that I have been comfortable with. My area of expertise is very much primary education. So when I had secondary teachers approach me wanting to tutor, I was thrilled and was really happy to employ them and sort of extend and expand what I was able to offer.
It's amazing because as you think about this, I always think actually sort of even today, even in adult education, there's almost a need sometimes, because it goes, the skill sets vary all the way through life. And it's suddenly, as you get to a certain age, you almost think, oh, I wish I could knew that again, or remind us. But it's a huge opening, isn't it, really, to fill in skills. And particularly, obviously, when you're at school, in senior school, you definitely need that filling gap because not everyone runs at the same speed, and it's so important to fill those gaps and the skills.
Definitely.
So can we talk a little bit about your amazing facility? I know I did a little summary earlier about it, but honestly, could you just sort of like give us a virtual tour around, sort of as you sort of explain about what each area is used for and how it benefits the children?
Okay, so where we're sitting right now is my teaching space. So this is very much a replica of what I had at home. So it is set up to be a group space for up to 8 children. And there are lots of engaging things on the wall so that if what I'm saying isn't particularly interesting, they can be looking around and sort of looking at other things as well. So this is where I do my own teaching after school. And as I said before, I teach in lots of different ways. So we've got a nice sort of flexible space so the children can move around the room and work in pairs. There's also space so that they physically do move around the room. Sometimes with some of the activities I'm doing, they would need to actually move to different corners of the room to answer questions, for example. I've got an interactive screen or TV screen there where I can mirror my iPad. So I can sort of model questions up there and be annotating on my iPad for all the children to see. Large whiteboard as well. And then the children have scribble tablets and iPads and also whiteboards, so they can be working in a range of ways. Even when they're doing written work, they can be working in lots of different ways. So this is my space, and Then we go through the door in the corner there, and that's the main tuition space where my team are based. So that's set up it's divided into 5 different learning pods inside the main space. And in each of those pods, there might be an individual session happening or a small group session. So for maths and English, booster groups, so for children of varying ages who need a little bit of extra help with maths or English, I have a maximum of 4 in a group. One of the tutors on my team is offering Year 4 Kent test sessions alongside mine. So I offered 2 sessions a week this year. They were very, very quickly filled. So one of the tutors on my team offers parallel sessions. She has 6 in a group. And alongside those 5 learning pods, there is one separate, when the building was built, it was designed to be an office space, but I use it as a teaching space for my secondary groups. And also I have a couple of children who come who have ADHD, so they like being there because then they're away from the distractions of the noise. There's deliberately not as much visual distraction on the wall for those children, so they can work in a much calmer environment. There's a sofa area through there as well, so if tutors are reading or they want to play a game or they just want to sit and have a chat with their pupil as a change of scenery or a change of pace for the pupil during the session, they can use the sofa space. And there's lots of carpet area as well, so particularly as primary teachers we quite like to mix it up a bit and be practical. So it might be that some of the tutors sort of spill out of their pods and are working on the floor playing games.
And children love that. I don't know. They like to get on the floor and play around and sort of lay stuff out. And it's good. It's great.
I remember in your previous, obviously, where you had like the space at home, you had that beautiful library and the books. And now here you made it even cozier and better and nice with the sofa, and it's called Jeni's Library. It's called
Jeni's Library, yes. Yeah, one of the things that I really, really try and instill in my pupils is a love of reading. I love reading children's books. The whole sort of escape from reality I find really relaxing. I can't be trusted to actually read a book on a work day because I would just be reading until the end. But when I go on holiday, I read a lot, and I love reading children's books. So there's a whole section in the library which is called Jeni's Favourite Books, and those are books that I can talk really knowledgeably to my pupils about and try and encourage them to read. But I used to just have a bookcase at home, and then that expanded onto the windowsill, and then another bookcase, and then my husband put up some extra shelves. But to actually have a whole library space here is fantastic, and it's in the shop space so that the children can come and change their library books whenever the shop's open. They don't have to wait for their sessions. So that's a deliberate move.
So they can borrow the books anytime they want.
Which is great, and they swap and they talk about that.
Absolutely, they bring their book back, and they might. I will ask them if they enjoyed it, and mostly they did. Sometimes, of course, they didn't. And then if they enjoyed it, I'll ask them what they liked, and then someone else in the group might say, "Oh, can I borrow that one next? That sounds really good." Or we go as a group sometimes and all have a look at the books together, and then they'll be chatting to each other about books that they've read, and so they're recommending new authors and new titles to each other all the time, which is great to see.
And it's amazing because that just naturally improves their English skills.
Definitely.
Their ability to read, and also almost certainly will improve their spelling ability as well, because they just learn the words. It's and obviously when you're that age, you just absorb, which is fantastic.
And it gives them super ideas for their own writing as well.
Yeah, makes them creative. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Typically, how long do the tutoring lessons last for? When the sessions, when children come, how long would they be? Obviously, they'd come, straight after school, or does it vary depending on different times?
It varies. So sessions last an hour.
Okay.
I have 3 sessions every weekday afternoon. Some of my tutors have 3 sessions, but those are the tutors who are not teaching in school, either on those days or at all. When teachers come from school to work here, they tend to offer 2 sessions because just time-wise, that's more practical. So session times vary, mainly because we all come in through the same entrance. And so if we were all trying to meet and greet our pupils and start our sessions at the same time, from a practical point of view, it wouldn't work. But also just logistically, if a tutor can't get here until 4:15, 4:30, then that's when we'll start their first session.
I mean, the one thing that struck me as well, obviously, you've got two ways into the building. You've got obviously the way through the shop, which is obviously just to go to the shop.
Yes.
But then the children, when they come, they've got a separate entrance, which is through a security door, which makes the whole place safe as well, which is really important, obviously, because obviously everyone's always worried about safety today and safeguarding, which is obviously a really important aspect, isn't it?
And Jeni's very strict, I can say. She doesn't let the child go until she see the parent, or if it's someone else, you need to make sure, which is really good, because nowadays you can't trust everyone. And I love it when it's someone, because I came here to pick up a friend child, and although Jeni knows me, she was asking him, is it obviously Meri that you have to go home with? And until he confirmed, you wouldn't let him, that should be the way.
On more than one occasion, I've brought a child back in and phoned the parent and said, the child is saying this is the adult they're going with. Can you confirm that, please? Obviously, once I know, I make a note, and then that's all fine. And as the year progresses, more and more parents will say, it might be so-and-so collecting them at the end, or it might be this person, and then that's absolutely fine. But to start with, at the beginning of the year, I sometimes have
but this is important. It's very important. I'm always finding it, because you hear lots of stories. For me as well, it's very important when you turn to the child and you ask the child, do you know this person? Do you know that? Because usually the kids, sometimes might happen
they're friends.
No, like I've been stuck in a traffic and I call someone and my child wouldn't know. No. But you always make sure you do the right phone calls and you let the people know.
Cool. If the person collecting isn't the person I'm expecting, then I will bring the child back in and phone the parent to confirm. And the tuition centre is only accessible to members of my team and pupils when sessions are in progress. So parents are welcome to come and have a look at the space if they'd like to, but that needs to be either during school hours when we haven't got home educating children here for their learning, or on Saturday mornings. And then I'd be happy to show parents round, but the door is always locked once tutors are back in with their pupils for safeguarding reasons.
So for 8 years, I would say you'd never probably expect where you're going to go and what's going to happen when you started. Now, have you got any vision where you want to go? Do you think like it may grow, or you don't have this vision?
I'm a bit scared to answer that, because my husband is going to watch this and he's going to be hanging his head and wringing his hands if I say I've got more plans.
Got something? Because I assume it looks like obviously the things happen on their own as well, but somehow inspiration is coming. And as a personality, as I can understand, and obviously all this that you made here, it was a vision. It became probably a vision at some point. It took you time to realize, to make it working. Probably this can grow just a bigger center or tutoring.
This wasn't ever the plan in any way, shape or form when I started. I genuinely just wanted to buy my husband a Christmas present. But it has kind of grown organically over the years. I think really my goal at the moment is to have all of the learning spaces in the building filled after school every day, and to have the space used during school hours as well.
How do you relax? How Jeni find time for herself? And obviously how you find time, and what do you do to recharge yourself?
My New Year's resolution is to have a better work-life balance.
Okay.
I think is the best way to answer that question. I don't have nearly enough downtime right now. That's something that I definitely need to work on. The setup here throughout last year was intense. We bought the building in June, and then it took, because I was still working all day, every day, Monday to Friday. And so every weekend day was spent here setting up. So there wasn't very much downtime at all last year. And that now is starting to rebalance, but I'm not yet at the stage of really doing anything other than working and being with my family and just being at home. So I love swimming. That's something that I would like to start again. I also really like walking. I've done some power walking marathons in the past, and going for nice long walks is a really good way for me to calm my thoughts. So that's something that I need to think about getting back into my schedule as well this year.
It's a very tough thing, isn't it, when you're a business owner and you're growing a business and you're making it, and it's constantly evolving as well, because as you said earlier, within the test, things are evolving all the time, so you're always looking to learn, so it makes it difficult to get that balance. But
absolutely, and I think it is really important, but it's really difficult for me to switch off completely, because whenever I do something, I want to do it to the very, very best of my ability. And so I need to keep reminding myself that actually finding time to recharge and relax is part of
as well, because you're
doing
going to
the
come
best
up
I
with
can.
better ideas, more energy,
definitely. And some of my best ideas have actually come when I've been walking.
Oh, fantastic!
Yes, because it clears your head of all the day-to-day things that you're normally thinking about, and ideas just sort of start to flow. So whilst I don't really need any more ideas in my life right now, I just need to implement some of the ones that I've had previously. That perhaps is something
while you were
valuable.
growing, and obviously all these years, did you have anyone who played an inspirational role for you, or you learn a lot from them, who was a bit like a mentor or inspiration for you? Is there anyone who played that role in your life?
My mum was a teacher, very, very good teacher, and my dad is a business owner. So I guess
look at that.
so I guess consciously my answer to your question is no, but there's obviously an influence from both of them in how I've ended
Sounds
here.
like it.
But it's again this kind of influence that we don't realize
but it's not. Yeah,
it's a subconscious influence, isn't it?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. So yes, I grew up with my dad growing his business from being something quite small to being something very successful. Saw the challenges that my mum had being in school, trying to be the very best teacher that she could be, but putting in a huge effort and working
really
too many hours.
Obviously, looking at your dad, can you see yourself that you are using some of his whatever you learn or you've seen what he was doing, you use on your...
I mean, I talked to him about my business a lot. He's really interested in how other people run their businesses. And so we chat a lot about how things are going. And he's a really good sounding board, because he will sort of obviously let me know how things are in his business, but will also ask me questions that make me think more deeply.
From the point of successful businessman, it's good to give you good advices and ideas. Oh, that's... How about your kids? Is anyone showing any signs of either teaching or business related?
So my daughter is currently teaching in Thailand.
Oh, wow.
She's not a qualified teacher yet, but she's threatening to come back to the UK to do a PGC at some point. She has a degree in psychology with education. So there's my key interest really is in the psychology of learning and how children learn. So she's definitely followed something there with me. Yeah, so she is teaching English as a second language in Thailand at the moment. My son hasn't vocalised anything. He's recently finished a carpentry diploma at Canterbury College and is now working full time. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being self-employed at some point in the future, but he hasn't actually said anything along those lines.
Those things evolve, don't they?
Absolutely. As long as everybody does what they like to do. And the way I will ask one last question, is there a habit that you've got that help you a lot and is something that you can suggest to people, or just share a little thing that is helping you?
Certainly for me, when I'm doing some form of exercise, I feel physically and mentally much better. and a long walk really gives me the opportunity to explore thoughts, because thoughts just flow when I'm out in nature. If I'm on my own, the thoughts flow more easily, but there's also something very lovely about having the opportunity to chat at length to somebody who you trust. So I think there are benefits either way, really.
By the way.
Yeah.
And we are quite happy here. I like a walk next to the seaside. Usually,
Yes.
this is fine. This is the good thing here, that
We've
in
got
10
lots of
minutes
options.
you are
Yeah.
just there and you can enjoy it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing today. So Sunnydene Tutoring is the name of the business.
Yeah.
You're based down here in Faversham. So anyone, if they'd like to meet up or make an appointment, I guess they can use your contact page on your website.
Yes.
Which is probably the easiest way to find you.
Yeah.
And Facebook.
And
I'm on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is there any other things that you would like to share?
The other thing I would like to share is that on the book online page of my website, there is an option to schedule a phone call with me. We've talked a lot about the Kent Test services that I provide to parents who send their children along to sessions. One of the things that is an idea that I'm yet to implement, but it is very much something I'd like to pursue, is offering some of the benefit of my experience and expertise in Kent Test preparation to parents who want to prepare their children at home. So there's an option on the book online page to schedule a call. And if anyone would like to have 30 minutes of my time to pick my brains about the Kent Test, then they can absolutely use that as a way of booking. I think maybe parents don't, because they're worried that if they come into the shop, I'm going to try and sell them some practice books, or if they call, I'm going to try and persuade them to come along to sessions. But I think, you know, there are lots of parents who are fortunate enough to be in a position to send their children for sessions. There are lots of parents who actively decide they're going to prepare their children at home, and yeah, that's absolutely fine, of course. But there are undoubtedly parents who would like a little bit of extra information, or who have questions about the Kent Test process so that they can support their children at home more effectively. So I'd just like to let parents know, really, that whilst if their children would like to come to sessions or they'd like to buy some books, then I can definitely support with that. I am genuinely happy to chat with parents about the
and
test
I can
process
confirm
as well.
that, yeah, if you reach to Jeni, you will get information that you need without being pursued to do anything further. Depend of your situation and your choice. So definitely don't be scared to make that call.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for showing us this lovely place. And yeah, all the best.
Thank you very much.
To everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeni. And for everyone who's watching, we hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to know more information, please do look at the contact details below and do follow through. Obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, we'd ask if you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel and give us a like if you've enjoyed the episode. And if you're watching on Spotify or listening, please do give us a follow. Thank you very much.